Well, welcome to the show, and we're
Thank you.
It's one of
We
those
just
things.
jumped into it.
Yeah. Well, that's when kind of have a resonance, and there's certain things that you started to say that got my attention right away, and that's the beautiful thing. But first off, and we'll get into it, congrats on the book.
Thank you.
I know it's a lot of work.
It is. Anybody who's done it, you go, I literally rewrote every one of these words 15 times. It's just incredible, isn't it?
And the research.
It's given me so much more respect for...
Oh, my God. Yeah. So welcome, and thanks for coming in. And, we started, we can just jump right into that part of it, but I don't know if you want to say, but you're working on a show potentially that you want to dive into the Weston Price. I don't know if you want to say that.
I mean, I can. Even talked about the fact that a lot of times people don't understand he's a dentist.
Yeah.
They talk about him, but they don't know he was a dentist. And what does that have to do with anything?
It's kind of been lost a little bit.
Yeah.
And the beautiful work of Weston Price I resonate with it because he showed up. And oh my God, the places he showed up in at the time, like, God.
Yep.
Talk about commitment.
Yep.
So was that, Dr. Price, was that one of the first places you looked as a model, being a dentist yourself? And I mean, obviously, we'll get into what exposed, literally.
Yeah.
Exposed you.
I had never heard of him. And I think that's a really good story, too. So we need to talk about that.
Okay.
I'd never heard of him and how I got to find him and all the above.
So let's talk about Weston Price since we're talking about it, and then we'll get into your origin story. But so what was it then that Dr. Weston Price, the surprising, how did it lead? How did you get to Dr. Price and being a dentist, why you didn't know about him?
I'd never heard of Dr. Weston Price. And, that was all through my upbringing. My dad's a dentist, and through schooling and all of the above, never even heard of him before. But when I got into studying nutrition and working on how to heal my own body and get well, I found out about this Dr. Weston Price. Yeah. And then I found out he was a dentist, and he was the head of the research department at the precursor to the American Dental Association at the time. And he went and basically devoted 10 years of his life to studying what foods led to health in the people that he was researching. And I thought, why are we not talking about this inside of dentistry? And really, there's an enormous disconnect inside of dentistry, but inside of medicine in general, between nutrition and the way the body works. Yeah. Nobody is saying that food, I mean, they'll talk about, don't eat a lot of, fats because you'll have high cholesterol. Yeah. But nobody's saying, oh, wow, food is literally the basis of health.
Yeah. And to that point, I mean, he, not only the people that he studied, he indigenously studied. And the astonishing aspect of what he discovered was this almost perfection of not only the health of the teeth, the alignment of the teeth, and pales in comparison to even today.
And the whole body. I mean, he was studying things like fertility rates in societies and how the diet was influencing that. And what I find most fascinating about his work is that it wasn't that he picked one food. He didn't say, this is the food that they were all eating. But he found that it was the constituents of that food, what was in that food that made the difference. So people living in the Swiss Alps and the people living in, in Alaska eating whale blubber, they were eating different foods. But he found what was it about those foods that made the difference for health. And that, to me, is the most important part of his research.
That's probably the canary in the coal mine in a sense, because if you can point that to poor soil quality, agrochemical created food and all of that stuff, and it's like if the compounds and the constituents are not present, and they're not, obviously in those days, the wild foraging and all of that stuff, there was no modern world that stripped it of those compounds, but largely we're looking at a carrot or a whatever, and it looks like a food, but the what's in it has largely changed.
It's largely changed. Exactly right. I have a homestead that we live on, and I'm a big gardener, and this is what we do for pretty much from now until October. We just eat from our garden. And when people ask me about health, they ask, well, what food should I eat? What this? And it's more than that. It's what should the food have in it that then feeds your cells.
Yeah.
And that's the difference. And that's what he found as well, because he was studying societies that were eating the food that had been eaten for thousands of years, generations of people behind them or before them. And that food hadn't changed, but our food today has changed. Yeah. So that really, to me, is the message that needs to now move forward from Dr. Weston Price's research is how do we take what he learned and say, how do we now apply it to the world we live in that has specific challenges? I literally just spoke to this last weekend talking about how do we have plants, how do we make sure that they actually have what we need? How do we handle grains properly to get what they have for us out of them? Because there's so many issues with that. How do we use the foods that he found were so great? How do we use them with today's challenges? And that's really the thing that has to be talked about.
Yeah, the speeding up in the volume of food creation, right? The lack of understanding the bran and the germ and the fermentation and the sprouting and the use of things as opposed to the way they. I mean, that was always when I was traveling around so much. You'd sit just at a group in the middle of nowhere and just watch what they ate and how they prepared it and where they got it. And it was massively different.
Yep.
And so it's like this conundrum now that we're in this kind of conveniently created world, almost, put together with paper clips in terms of a health, right? Because it's void. And I'm still fascinated with compounds. Like I have this part of me like, you got to eat food, but then all of a sudden there's all this kind of emerging science around what are those compounds in food and what are we missing and how do we kind of walk this path of like not everyone can have a homestead.
Yep.
Like my property, I'm still rebuilding after the fire, but I've built a garden, I have plans for the food forest and all of that stuff. But gosh, how do you as a normal person living in a city?
Yep. Yeah, in an apartment with a balcony. Yeah. How do you actually do that? And really that is one of the main topics that I tackle in my new book is how do we live with the seasons? How do we actually learn what our body and cells need with today's new world challenges? Yeah. With the world that we live in today. And it's interesting because you look back at some of those indigenous societies and they were doing things like soaking their grains. They were grinding, taking the bran off of the rice. Why were they doing those things? They actually took more time to do all of that. And I've really asked myself these questions. Those were not fast processes. Right. They did them because they realized that when they did those things, it improved health. Right. So what I believe is that if we as a society start to ask our food suppliers, no matter where we live, for a different kind of food, for something that actually will nourish us. There's enough demand for it, and thankfully, today's climate is political climate, just the conversational climate. We're starting to ask those questions again, and I think that that's so important for all of us.
Yeah, there's an exciting nature to it all, and under no delusion do I think also that the policymakers and all of that stuff is going to make it last. I hope so, but makes changes that I see. Like that's where I like the grit of people. Yep. Having these conversations.
It's the conversations that drive it.
Yeah. Yep. And kind of getting back to community and getting back to well, what is that real message? And that's, I guess your takeaway into Dr. Price's work. And to now, you've clearly mimicked some of that and have your own homestead. But then there's this world that you came from, this conventional dentistry world that, God, if you just think about it, it's still so far away. And all of the normal, quote unquote, medical theories and constructs are still so far away from what? Health.
Yeah.
And it's like, your origin story of taking out mercury after mercury and then realizing, and what's going on with my health? And then you're getting toxified just by being a practitioner of taking what they thought was benign.
Yep.
And stable in the mouth.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
How long was that going on for in the dentistry? And are they still using?
Yes.
What?
So, my story is really an interesting one, and one that I did not ever intend to go through whatsoever. I was trained traditionally. I'm a traditionally trained dentist. My father's a dentist. My grandfather was an internist. This was just my family. Wow. And I didn't know that there was really any other way to go. We would sometimes joke that chiropractors, they would call them quackopractors. That was really the mindset in my home about any kind of alternative care. Mm-hmm. And I was just working inside of that industry for about 10 years when I started to get really, really sick. Mm-hmm. And I started having gut issues, but everybody has gut issues, right? That's how you start you start excusing it away. Everybody has gut problems. We just need to eat differently. And then I started having brain issues. I couldn't finish sentences. I couldn't remember patients' names from room to room. And then the big one is I had this painful numbness in my hands, and I couldn't hold instruments. I couldn't blow dry my hair. I couldn't sleep at night. Nothing. So I actually had my practice for sale. And I didn't know what I was going to do. And that's when I started really questioning, well, does medicine know what they're doing? Because they weren't able to answer my issues at all. I had no answers for what was going on with me. Finally, an alternative, what we might call holistic dentist, said, have you ever looked into mercury poisoning? And that was the first time anybody had ever said those words to me. Because the only thing I learned about mercury in dental school was that it was completely safe. And yes, silver fillings have mercury in them. We were told that. Every dentist was. But they were completely safe, and if I told someone that it could affect their health, I would lose my license. That was it.
How is that possible?
That was it. Yep. So when I heard this, I thought, that can't be true, because that is completely safe. Yes, those fillings are 50% mercury, but they're completely safe. Mm-hmm. And he said, it just might be worth getting tested. So I got tested, and that's what it was. Mercury poisoning off the charts. So then I just took a deep dive. Like, what in the world? What else do I not know, first of all, in dentistry that could be affecting health?
It's a matrix moment.
What am I living inside of here? So I just started learning, obviously, first about mercury. And in the 1800s, barbers were doing dentistry. And they were filling holes with this paste or putty they would make from mixing silver shavings with liquid mercury. And the doctor said, whoa. We don't know if that's a great idea, because hat makers at the time were also using mercury. They were using it to create felt for felt hats. So they would rub liquid mercury on fur, and that would create the stiffened felt that they would make all these felt hats with. Well, have you ever heard of Mad Hatters? That's where the term comes from. Wow. The hat makers were mad, were literally losing their minds. In fact, they were in their often early 20s. They would shake so bad they couldn't feed themselves anymore because of mercury poisoning. So the doctor said, I don't know that it's a great idea to put mercury in fillings, because we see that it's literally killing these young men who are making hats with mercury. And unfortunately, the dollar won, and they said, well, we're making money on it. We think it's a great idea, and that's where they came from. Still used today in the United States. In other European countries, they've been banned, but in the United States, they are still absolutely in use. The FDA has said to not use them in children under the age of 6 and pregnant women. And then I say, well, why anyone then? And they're still used, often in lower demographic areas, because they're inexpensive. So you get mouths full of these fillings that are 50% mercury still today, and no one's talking about it.
Right. So they're not stable. You're gassing yourself all the time.
All the time. Yep.
It's going in your blood. It's going in your nervous system. It's going in your brain. It's like.
And people talk about mercury in fish and in vaccines, but is anyone talking about it in fillings? It's actually the number one source of mercury in the environment is fillings, because I didn't get sick because I had fillings. I got sick because I was drilling them out of people's teeth. I was a cosmetic dentist. Right. And people were saying, these are really ugly. Can you get them out of my teeth? Sure. My head's right above their head. As you drill on it, it creates gas and vapors, and it literally filled my head. So research now shows, I won't lose my license to say this now, research now shows that those fillings do release mercury 24/7 in your mouth. Every time you chew, every time you get a hot or cold change, so you drink cold water, you eat hot soup, it's releasing mercury from those fillings.
Jesus.
Yeah.
It's crazy. And so what were the first steps that you took then to kind of chelate those out of your system?
So first I had to quit putting them in. And that was the biggest challenge, because either I lose my entire career or I figure out how to do this.
Right.
So thankfully there was an organization that already had protocol. I had never heard of them either. And so they already had protocol for how to do this safely. So we started doing all kinds of protection. I had this crazy mercury, mask that I wear when we do these procedures. We cover the patient head to toe. We use a giant vacuum. All of these things had to happen. And I always tell people, if you're going to get these fillings removed, do not do it unless you find someone who can do it like that, because you'll just get a whole bunch more mercury in your system. So don't do it unless you're going to do it safely. So that was number one. And then I started doing chelation. And like you said, people might not know what chelation is. Mercury goes to hide. It hangs out in the brain, the kidneys, all these other places, and you can't just get it out. You can't just do a blood test, or it's just not there. You have to pull it from those places and then make it available to actually detox. So I had to get all of my detox organs working. My liver had to be working. My kidneys had to be working. Everything had to be working to actually be able to get rid of it. And then I did a real slow chlorella, lots of chlorophyll, which is lots of green foods. Mm-hmm. That was my detox, because anytime I tried to speed it up and do it faster, I got deathly ill.
Wow.
I could not go faster than that. So the earth gave me my chelators through lots of green foods, lots of chlorophyll-containing foods.
Isn't that amazing?
Yep. It was already there.
Right. It's right there. The nature's got the answer to some of our fumblings.
Yep. And what's interesting now that I look back, I'll always remember this. I was at a family camp with my family, and the food was terrible. It was one of those that you eat PB&J on white bread kind of things every single meal. And so I was feeling awful. And I told my husband, I said, you got to go get me some lettuce. Just go get me a whole box of lettuce at the grocery store. So we drove down the mountain where we were staying. He brought me back this box, and I ate the entire box of lettuce that day. And now I look back and I think it's because my body needed that chlorophyll to help get rid of all of that. I had no idea why I was literally eating like a rabbit, but it's what my body was saying you need right now.
Right. What do you think we talk about oral health, but there's still there's so much going on in the mouth. There's so much going on with, obviously, the mercury and who knows what else they're using. And it's a bit of a missing link here, I think. So what's now your view on if someone wants to get healthy and they're not kind of acknowledging their mouth? What are some of the things that you've now discovered that are essential for people's health?
And this was an interesting evolution for me, because I didn't know any of it. And so people would start saying things like, well, this is crazy. Why do you look like you were in a hazmat location, when you're removing fillings? And so I would explain it. Yeah. And they would say, oh, this is good for me, right? My doctor might be interested. So then doctors started teaching me, and they started asking questions like, what are your thoughts on root canals? We've actually heard some concern with that. And what about fluoride? Is it really as good as you guys all tout, and started asking these questions that I'd never asked before, because I had just been taught that it still is standard of care. It was just standard of care inside of dentistry. Right. So I started really looking closely. And what I found is 60 to 80% of chronic disease conditions are related to the mouth in one way or another.
Wow.
Huge. In fact, I had patients just a couple of weeks ago, a woman, stage 4 cancer, came, and she said, I see people from all over the world that are sick. And she said, I've researched every cancer story where the person actually survived. And she said every single one of them included dentistry as part of their protocol. So that's exactly right, because there's so many missing pieces here. So mercury is one of them, obviously just metals in general. Huge one is hidden infections. And people are not talking about this. This is the root canal issue. And there was a whole documentary on it called Root Cause that got rapidly removed from any streaming sites within about a month's time.
Netflix for a
it
second?
was, and then it got taken away. Now you can go and pay to watch it. But it was removed very rapidly because this is a big deal. There are 25 million root canals done in the United States per year, and they harbor infection nonstop.
Jesus. So I have a root canal.
So now we're talking. Now we're getting personal.
Yeah. Well, so I'll tell you the whole. So this tooth. Right?
There had to be an accident of some variety.
I was a BMX kid, and one of my brother's evil little friends. We were doing this bunny hop. Bunny hopping. You take the bike and you jump over something, and this little kid, and we were like doing every inch and seeing how high we could do it on the road, no helmets.
Of course.
Not then. Right in front of the house. Mom was there. She was an ex-nurse. We were fine. So just as I was about to jump over this thing, he put a stick in my front wheel. And it went so fast and my face hit the ground, the concrete, my tooth. So this thing died. So luckily I met a holistic dentist years ago, and he went back in and he ozoned the whole thing, right? So he killed whatever harboring. I mean, it's horrifying now that you think about it. It's a dead bone, right?
Yeah, it's a dead organ in your body.
It's a dead organ, and then they fill it and cap it, and it's just a breeding ground if they don't do it properly, if at all proper. So anyway, he went back in and then ozoned, and then we recapped it, and he thought at the time it was fine. I still don't know to this day. Well, it's probably better than if nothing had happened. So I don't know what your thing is.
That's literally the entire story of root cause of that documentary. Really? Yeah, he hit his front tooth. I think it was like a surfing accident.
Oh, no way.
And ended up with this string of health issues that he could never solve until he finally went back and looked at that root canal. Wow. So the issue is anatomy, tooth anatomy. There's the main nerve canal that's filled up, cleaned up, all the above.
Right.
But the problem is there's little feeder channels that go off of that main canal. And every dentist knows this. We've been taught they're called dentinal tubules. It's the reason that when you tap on your tooth, you can feel it, because there's little nerves that go all the way up through the tooth. Right. So those feeder channels are too small to clean and too small to fill. So there's always going to be some little bit of nerve tissue, blood vessel tissue left inside of the tooth. Anytime you have dead stuff, bacteria are going to find it. I joke and say, if you had a gallbladder attack and they just took it out, cleaned it up, stuffed it full of rubbery stuff, and then shoved it back in. Right. Would there be a problem? Yes.
Of course, yeah.
Because bacteria always find something that doesn't have a blood supply, that doesn't have an immune supply. There's no way for immune cells to get there. So now you have this low-grade chronic inflammatory condition going on in the body. So your body has to deal with it nonstop. And this is why we see the connection between other chronic diseases. Not because the root canal caused it, but because the root canal decreased the immune function in the body. So now the body's not able to deal with other things when they come along. So that's the biggest issue.
The resiliency is dropped.
It just tanks. Yep.
So what do you think? Should I pull it?
Sure, let's do it right now.
On air.
Let's do it. Imagine the ratings there.
But I probably should, right?
Probably should have a cone beam CT scan. That's the first step.
A CT scan.
Yep, it's called a cone beam CT scan, abbreviated CBCT. That's where you start, because on a traditional dental X-ray, I can see a little bit if it's really big. Just 2 days ago, I saw a woman, and she had multiple dental X-rays numerous times, and everybody said, "You're just fine. There's nothing going on in your mouth." But she said, "Well, I don't know. I just like my gums are swollen. I don't know what's going on over here." No. It's all just fine. We took the CT scan. She's had 11 root canals. And 7 of them had massive abscesses on them. Literally, 2 of them on the top teeth had eaten a hole through the bottom of her sinus and had filled her entire sinuses. And she'd been told numerous times, they're all fine.
What?
A traditional dental X-ray can't show it. You cannot see it. You have to get a cone beam CT scan, which is a 3-dimensional image. I can flip you upside down, and I can cut away each tooth, just, little slice by slice. That's your first step.
Okay.
That's your first step. So unfortunately, we won't pull it out today. It would be fun.
Just old school, take a shot of whiskey or something. Even though I don't drink, it would probably be very effective.
Exactly.
Wow. What? I mean, God, this is so... No one talks about this stuff.
I know.
I mean, yeah, flippantly. But here's my biggest challenge. I'm from a small town in Minnesota. My family still lives there. My mom, my brother, my cousins, and all. Like,
Yep.
they have no option other than the options that were created. And there's a guarantee there's no holistic dentist. They're doing all of the same stuff. I guarantee my mom has probably almost every tooth has some sort of filling.
Something on it. Yeah.
Right? That's the issue.
Yep.
You and I can find the means. I can make some calls. I can find someone,
Yep.
and I can start taking care of it. But that's okay, fine. That's fine for me. But the issue with all of this shit is that these indoctrinated medical models are, pun intended, rooted in these long-standing concepts and ideas, and they still don't change. And to have you be told that you'll lose your license for doing something outside, that's cultish. That's I mean, I don't mean to be dramatic, but that's criminal. That's not okay.
Yeah.
When I see it from the outside looking into whatever doctor in the system, right? And I also know many people getting into this never intended to hurt anybody, or they intended to help people, but then all of a sudden they're confined and shackled by the very system that they've kind of dedicated so much of their life and time and money to. And they're smart people, and no one wants to, unless you're clinically something, but no one wants to knowingly harm anybody.
Nope.
That's the conundrum.
Yes.
You've got amazing, great people like yourself that went through a system and you wanted to help, and generations of it was in your blood, and you were not aware of all of this stuff.
Yep.
Like how do you kind of rectify all of that stuff? Like I'm very curious how you orient yourself now to the profession, to the system, to obviously you're writing a book about it. You're getting out there. You want to do a show, like, and that's, if there's anything I can do to help, I absolutely will. I'll just say that.
Just come along with me.
Yeah. You don't have to twist my arm too much.
Okay, we'll pull your tooth on that show.
There we go. I'll just take a safe local herb or something.
We'll do a little sweat lodge beforehand. No. But this is a great question. And I'm a very positive, abundance-minded person. Yeah. I always assume positive intent. Yeah. I believe that people got into medicine, got into dentistry, got into any aspect of it because they really did want to help people. And if you ask all of them, they're going to say that. Yeah. I'm doing this because I want to help people. Yeah. The challenge is, and I've studied this extensively, actually, I talk about it some, the evolution of medicine and how it got from the medicine man in your community that was so highly revered to now we have to go to a doctor for anything related to health. Mm-hmm. How did we get from here to here? And it took, not that long, actually, about 100 years is all it took really to get from there to there. But the challenge is that we consider medicine something we do once we've gotten sick. Yeah. And I'm going to push back and say medicine is the thing we do to keep ourselves well. Mm-hmm. And that's really the difference in thinking. So I've seen challenges inside of the industry because I teach dentists. And it's actually my least favorite thing to do. I don't like teaching dentists because there's so much just pushback and naysayers. And as I've really delved into that, I've realized one thing. It took a long time and a lot of money to get where they are. Yeah. And they're doing okay. And so I've had people just say straight up, look at me in the eye and say, why would I do it any differently? It's going fine. And really their job is to fix a problem. You come in with a cavity and they put a filling in it.
Yeah.
It's a lot more work to say, why did you get that cavity to begin with? Other than use some more fluoride. That's the typical that's the conversation is, well, you just need to brush better. You just didn't floss, or let's use a stronger percentage of fluoride. It's more work to say, actually, it's not, cavities aren't a deficiency of fluoride. This is an interesting concept, but they're not. Cavities are a deficiency of minerals. So where do minerals come from? They come from the soil, which then feeds the food, which then feeds you. They come from the water. So if you use a certain kind of water filter that removes them, all of a sudden, now you're deficient. Like, these are conversations we have every day, but they're hard. Yeah. They're hard to learn how to do it. It's hard to learn how to, put that into your daily flow. And so dentists just say, I like what you're saying, but it's just a lot of work. And what I'm doing is working. I'm plugging holes. So what I found is I actually don't teach the dentists. I do. There's some that want to learn. Mm-hmm. But what I do is I teach the people who are listening right now. Yeah. I teach you. I teach everyone that wants to know and do better for their own body to keep themselves well. And if enough of you hear this, you'll say, I want something different. So to your family that's, and someplace that might not have access to these, they at least can say, you know what? I don't like that idea of fluoride. It doesn't make sense to me anymore. And they can go online now and get a product that is a hydroxyapatite product that's a fluoride replacement. Mm-hmm. Thankfully, our world is global enough that we can access some of this. Yeah. But also, if you say, you know what? No, I actually heard root canals aren't great for me. Yeah. Instead, I'm going to actually have you remove that tooth, and we're going to replace it with a ceramic dental implant. Enough information shared equals empowered individuals that can take their health in their own hands. So for me, it's an education and, information effort.
Yeah.
So that enough people will have to go, oh, I've had 5 people this week alone tell me to use something other than fluoride. Okay, fine, I'll go look into something.
Right. Yeah, and it's also complicated in the sense of messaging too. It's like, because you're getting anything and everything and everyone saying anything about anything, right? On social, so experts become a dime a dozen, the perceived experts, right? And so then who do you listen to? And then it goes something that I like to think about, curate, and hopefully help promote is like that self-agency of listening to your knowing.
100%.
And like,
why I ate lettuce when I wasn't feeling good.
Yeah, you listen to yourself. Yep. There's something about it. I'm not going to eat, charred, dead flesh like on a grill all day when my body is actually in that moment requiring something completely different. Mm-hmm. But let's go back to a little bit of the fluoride thing. Mm-hmm. Because this scares the shit. I mean, this thing is it certainly, there's many things. It scares the shit out of me because, number one, neurotoxicity. Why is it? I know where fluoride comes from, a couple different gnarly places, but why would they medicate an entire population of people? If that were the case, you would be giving away vitamin C tablets and vitamin D and as a government. Like, if that were the real driving force, why would you? So this whole idea of it just never made sense. Mm-hmm. And I think actually even very recently, within the last few days, state of Florida shut down or is shutting down fluoride in the water.
Yep. Utah was the first state, which is my state.
Oh, right on.
I'm so proud of them.
That's
and
awesome.
Florida's the second. Yep.
Incredible.
So 2 just in the last month.
Yeah. Yep. Because it's so what's your stance on fluoride? And because I want to hear from the expert since we have an expert.
Exactly, since they're a dime a dozen.
Exactly.
So I, again, assuming positive intent, in the 1930s, 1920s, 1930s, they actually discovered that people who had higher levels of fluoride naturally in their water, so this was well water, right? Yep. They had stronger, more cavity-resistant teeth. Right. They also were splotched with brown splotches, but, that aside.
That wonderful cosmetic side.
Exactly, but they were more cavity-resistant. So all of a sudden, dentists and government in general said, we can do a good thing for people here. We can literally eradicate tooth decay. If we just add fluoride to toothpaste, to mouthwashes, to water, we can do away with it. So my first thing that I push back with this on is, did it work? Has anyone gotten a cavity since 1930? Yeah. Okay. That's the first question. Did it work? The answer is no.
Right.
So what that means is there's more to cavities than fluoride, right? More to cavities than fluoride. That's what Dr. Weston Price found. It's all about what we're eating. It's not just fluoride. So that's one issue. And there's no debate that fluoride actually does strengthen teeth. Like if I put fluoride right here in my tooth will be harder. Unfortunately, it doesn't stay there. Anything we put in our body is going to go everywhere.
Right.
So interestingly enough, as I've been researching this, I found that they used to use fluoride as a treatment for hyperthyroidism. So they knew, this is in the 70s, they knew that it actually decreased thyroid function. It interferes with iodine, which activates thyroid function or thyroid hormone. So it's a known thing that it decreases thyroid function. I can tell you all of this. I can show you research right now that shows everything that I'm telling you. So it decreases thyroid function. It changes the density of bone because bones and teeth are made of the same minerals.
Right.
Fluoride replaces the mineral. It creates something called fluorapatite instead of hydroxyapatite, which is the thing that we see when we smile. So it changes the density of bones and teeth. Brittle bones create more fractures, more bone fractures. And brand new research in literally just January of this year showed that it decreases IQ levels in children.
Right.
It has a neurotoxic effect, and they were able to equate it. Literally, you increase fluoride this much, you decrease IQ this much. It is a direct correlate. So it didn't work. We still are getting cavities, and it has all of these side effects. A cavity isn't because you don't have enough fluoride in your teeth. A cavity is because you have too little minerals in your teeth.
Right.
So I say the exact same thing you said. All right. Are we okay with the government saying everybody's just a little too depressed? So we're going to put an antidepressant in everyone's water. Problem is you might not need it. I might already be on it. My kids don't need the same dose that I have. Where would that would never happen. Like we would never let that happen. But that's what they're doing with fluoride. They're dosing it indiscriminately. You might not need it. I may already be taking it as a supplement. I may already be using fluoride toothpaste. My kid certainly doesn't need the same dose I have. This is the problem I have with fluoride. It should never have gone systemic. It should never have been ingested. And research shows it's actually not very effective systemically. If I put it right on your tooth, paint it right here, it actually strengthens your tooth. If you swallow it, it actually isn't as effective. So the whole concept started with this grandiose idea. We're going to save everybody from cavities. And here we are now saying, whoa, should never have done that.
But wasn't I forget the story, but I read a bunch of this stuff. But it was like there was a community to where they realized, high fluoride levels, but also a lot of the other minerals.
Absolutely.
Right? So it was like this community did have incredible teeth.
Yep.
And how is it that they decided to blow off all of the other 90 plus minerals and just focus on this fluoride, which, not to run down this road too much, but where they're getting their fluoride
it's industrial waste.
Yeah, it's an industrial waste.
Yep.
Pesticides, the aluminum industry. It's like, what?
Yep. Well, I think it's because if you add calcium and magnesium and phosphate to the water, you have hard water, which creates clogged piping.
Right.
When you add fluoride to the water, it doesn't do anything. Doesn't change the water, and it doesn't clog your pipes. So it was a real easy thing to add to the water. Real easy thing to add to the water, and it is readily available as a waste product from all of this manufacturing processes. So it's super easy. But interestingly enough, in the state of Utah, where I am, they are now talking to the people who are operating the community water services, right? They're going to these people and saying, okay, what are you doing to shut this down? They said, you have to have this turned off within 60 days, whatever it was. And they said, well, first of all, we literally have to wear a hazmat suit to add it to the water to begin with. And they said, we've had to do all these precautions. It's been very expensive to do this. And it's going to be a lot of work to turn it off now. So they're a little upset. They're like, well, you just got into the groove of, putting on the whole mask and the whole suit and everything to put this in the water. But nobody's ever asking, well, is this okay to add something to the water that we have to wear a hazmat suit to add?
Right.
I mean, it's just the whole thing is just so messed up. And really, I think it's And good intent gone completely awry.
Well, and then time
Yes.
is dangerous because
Yes.
it's like that origin. I love this Weston Price idea of kind of going back to it, we if we're not clear on the history, then history is told to us and shaping and it's shaped in the way that it wants us to receive it. And I'm humbled all the time when you actually look at something, when you actually study something, when you actually go to the place of origin, when you actually understand from the people there, and you look at what's going on and take in that information. I would also lean towards what you're saying. I think the origin of this stuff was never this conspiratorial idea. Now maybe it's gotten there.
Maybe it's evolved to be that. Yep.
And even to that point of the Utah municipalities going, well, we just got the system dialed in, and even them, they were thinking it was the right thing to do, you know?
Yep.
And now you're like, shut it off, like stop it. And so we as a modern world have gotten used to things and systems and ideas that we just believe are that someone out there has checked it, has
I like that. Someone.
Yeah.
It's just,
The regulatory bodies are like, that's the most frustrating, not the most, there's many most, but it's like there isn't this omnipresent, good faring regulatory
looking
body.
out for all of us all the time.
Like if it was like the proverbial mother of us all that was literally with that intent, then okay. But there isn't that person. It is a profit-pushing, profit-centered agendas that just keep this wheel going. And until we stop and reorient ourselves to what these things are and really look and listen to the experts and learn directly from them. I mean, that's why I traveled around the world, so that I could look, where's the ground and how are they processing? And I don't want to lose those incredible compounds that are coming from X, Y, and Z of these foods. And, that's the issue, right? Because we just accept all of this stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And thankfully we're a little less accepting nowadays, I think.
Oh my God.
Which is wonderful. And that, I think, is what we really need to empower, is to say, it's okay to ask questions. And, questions are important because the world has changed since the 1920s. When fluoride and all these other public health initiatives were started, the world has changed since then.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, there have been people that have profited mightily off of fluoride in products.
Yeah.
And it's time we just say, is it really the best we could do? And the answer is no, it's not the best we could do, because we have new research showing that cavities are a deficiency of minerals. We can put the minerals that are deficient back in.
Yeah.
It's called hydroxyapatite.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing is, I've been going through this journey of hydroxyapatite, is now there's all these naysayers about that. Oh, it's going to cross the blood-brain barrier and it's going to do all of these other things. I'm like, oh my goodness, we just, it doesn't matter what you talk about.
That's safe.
Yes. So the interesting thing about hydroxyapatite is it's just the mineral your teeth are made of and your bones are made of. It's just a mineral complex. And
cool.
The interesting thing about it is there were research studies showing that it may cross the blood-brain barrier, may calcify things. But here's the cool part about an oral product. If you use it as a tooth powder, a toothpaste, a mouthwash, most of it's going to be spit out. We've done research showing about 90% of it goes down the sink. The other 10% of it's swallowed. But that mineral complex breaks apart in stomach acid. So when you're using it in an oral product, it breaks apart into calcium, phosphate, hydrogen, oxygen, all the things that are grouped together as soon as it hits your stomach. So there's zero concern using it in any size. People talk about nano and micro. It actually doesn't matter. It needs to be small enough to get into the holes in your tooth. And once it hits your stomach, it breaks apart into things your body knows what to do with.
There again, an expert.
Yeah. And and that's really what I try to do, is just talk about real science. Really, what does it actually do?
Yeah.
This is what it actually does.
Right. Talk about I have a bunch of questions here that biological dentistry. Mm-hmm. What does that mean exactly for people?
A great question. So when I started going through all of this journey of my own, the only thing I knew to call myself was holistic. Mm-hmm. But anytime you say holistic anything, people think you're crazy.
Right.
So all of a sudden, all of my credibility goes down the tube, Now I'm just the crazy person. I'm like, I'm doing peace signs and I've got beads hanging in the door, and which is so untrue. That's just not me.
Yeah.
In fact, people come to my office and they say, this is the most technologically advanced dental office we've ever been in our entire life. Because I have to be. I have to back up what I do with science. Whereas you go to your neighborhood dentist, they don't have to back anything up. Right. Because they're doing standard of care, things that people have been doing for 80 years. Right. They're just doing the same thing. And we are ingrained with this, like fluoride, mercury, like we are just absolutely ingrained. This is the truth. Well, it's not necessarily the truth. There is some other truth. So I started calling myself holistic, and I had people leaving my practice saying, if I'd known you were holistic, I would never have come here. So I said, okay, that has a lot of stereotype and stigma that I really don't want to be associated with. Yeah. So then I learned about biologic dentistry. It's just another word for the same thing. It's somebody who's saying, I'm going to look at the biology of the body and say, what do I do and how can I affect the biology of the body? Mm-hmm. People don't really know what it means. There's no official, specialty. So I call myself a health-based dentist. Because to me, if I say health-based, you go, oh, cool. She's thinking about health, And so it just makes sense. Right. But all of these things are the same. Holistic, biologic, health-based, functional, integrative. They're all just saying, how does what we do here affect all of us?
Yeah. What do you think people brush their teeth, they floss, they try to do their best. They're now aware they're not putting weird metals in their mouth. What are the things that still people are absolutely getting wrong in their mouth that you see all the time?
So we have to go back to what causes a cavity. When you have acid in the mouth, it will dissolve minerals. So I like to use the example of a lot of people have, poured Coke on the battery terminals on their car, and it eats away all the crud, on there. That's acid eating away minerals. So acid in the mouth eats away minerals. Now there's two sources of acid. It could be your diet. So something as simple as lemon water. People love lemon water. And when you drink lemon water in the morning, it actually does alkalize some things. Right. It changes the body's chemistry a little bit. So again, some people will say, well, if a little bit's good, a lot bit's better. So they just drink lemon water all day long. Well, guess what? Lemon water is a pH of about 3. The lower it is, the more acidic it is. Battery acid is a pH of 2. Right. So we're right there. So all of a sudden, we're dissolving minerals from our mouths, using something we think is good, but using it inappropriately, if that makes sense. Right. The other reason we get acid is when bacteria eat sugar. This is the only one you know, right? Did your mom tell you to brush your teeth?
All the time.
Exactly. Why? Because she said sugar causes cavities.
Yeah.
Sugar doesn't cause cavities. When the bacteria in your mouth eat sugar, they excrete acid. That's what causes cavities.
Interesting.
So it's acid in your mouth, either from bacteria or from your diet, or it's if your body, this is the one people don't know, it's if your body needs minerals for other things. Okay. So often, I'll always remember this girl. She was in college. Her mom brought her in and said she just went to a dentist down by her college, and they said she had 16 cavities. And mom was livid. They just must be trying to make money off of her. I can't figure this out. Will you just do a second opinion and tell me what you find? So I did an exam, took the x-rays, looked in her mouth. I said, you don't have 16 cavities. You have 17. And mom nearly died. And she said, what are you talking about? And at the time, we just started loading her up with minerals. But now I understand better what's going on. Because the body is very much an ecosystem that has to stay in balance. The brain, the heart, we have to have them to survive, right? If our heart stops, we're dead. If our brain stops, we're dead. So they require minerals to function. Minerals carry electrons. That's what the term electrolyte is. An electrolyte is a mineral that carries electrons to allow your brain to fire, your heart to beat, all these things.
Cells to work, yeah.
Cells to work, all the above. So if your body needs those minerals and it's not getting enough, because either your gut's not functioning very well, which I think this is probably a good percentage of the population. Yeah. Our guts are turned off because of stressors, because of Wi-Fi. I mean, I could go on and on about this, why our guts are turned off. Yeah. So we are eating decently, but our gut isn't actually absorbing the nutrients we need. It's not able to take them and then send them to the cells. Also, if you have a high demand time, so think about a teenager, late teens, she's still growing. She's got puberty going on. She's eating terribly. She's not sleeping. The other time I see it is when pregnancy. You know, so many moms come in, they'll say, this root canal was this kid, this crown was this kid, because those are times of high mineral demand. You're literally growing a human that has bones and teeth. Same thing with teenagers. So when your body has a higher demand for minerals than what you're supplying it, it will go and find them. Guess
Steal
where
it.
a great source of minerals is? Your teeth and your bones. So I tell people, if you're getting a lot of cavities, you got holy bones too. Because the same thing is happening. I can see your teeth, I can't see your bones, but I can pretty much predict what's going on there. So this is the other side that no one talks about, and this is Weston Price. This is what he taught us, is that nutritionally, you can literally create an umbrella of protection over your teeth. I'll tell people all the time, I'll say, listen, I look in your mouth and I see you have had a cavity every year, haven't you? And they're like, yeah, or 3. You know, this has been my, and they brush their teeth, I see it. So it's not a toothbrushing issue. It's not what your mom told you. Say, you know what, we're going to get you to never having a cavity again. And they start to cry. And they're like, it's possible. It's absolutely possible. It's minerals on the inside. It's minerals on the outside. No cavities. So that is the thing that I see day in and day out. It's not fluoride. It's how do you get minerals? And that goes back to what you've studied so much. Food supply, and actually getting what we need out of the food. Or if we're not getting it there, we have to supplement it. And that's back to your question about your family. What do? They may have to supplement because they may not be able to get it in their grocery store where they're living.
Yeah, that's huge. I mean, and that's such a thing that we certainly want to reduce things down. Our brains work that way. We want to figure out what's the thing to do. So when you say fluoride's good, our brains can wrap itself around that. And it's coming from the authority and like, okay, I surrender to that authority and I will do what it... But the thing that you said, and I think is still not talked about enough, is that foundational thing of minerals itself. Electrolytes, yes, but the full spectrum minerals. And the reason we have to talk about it is the very thing that you said, because our foods are stripped. They're structurally still holding themselves together, but the inside and the full spectrum minerals aren't really there. So we have to actually go seek that foundation. And that foundation is quite weak in people. But I love that because I've never heard someone directly, especially as a dentist, say the foundation of your cavities and the foundation of your health of your teeth is your minerals profile.
Period. Yep. And as a gardener, I understand why the food supply has gone where it has, because when a plant is growing, first of all, you start with a seed. And inside that seed has enough nutrients for that seed to sprout, for it to get 2 or 3 leaves. And then from that point forward, that seed or that plant has to go and mine minerals and nutrients from the earth it's growing in. Unfortunately, what commercial agriculturalists figured out is that they can feed the top of the plant with a cocktail of 3 minerals, NKP it's called, right? Nitrogen, phosphate, and potassium, and it will grow the plant part. But what's missing is they don't feed the soil. So the soil is stripped or depleted of all the rest of the minerals. So now we have plants that are grown on NKP on 3 things where we need the entire spectrum. And it used to be that the plants would go deep into the soil with the roots and pull those minerals up, and they would be in the plants itself. So we would eat them. But our plants are now grown artificially with these 3 ingredients. So now they're deficient in all the things that the soil used to provide. That's the challenge. So we have these fabulous looking plants that have none of the nutrients that our soil or our cells actually need to run properly.
That's 90 plus, right? I mean, that's a full spectrum. And we used to be able, like, you could easily say it from like, hey, eat a colorful plate every day. Because you're going to get, minerals from everything, polyphenols and all of this stuff. But if it's from this conventional side of things all the time, then you're still probably going to have to supplement yourself through that. What do you think a way people can start to be proactive on maybe some of the minerals that they're missing?
For dental health especially, again, we have to go back to what Dr. Weston Price found. He found that when people had better dental health, they actually had 10 times more fat-soluble vitamins, which is interesting. And I think that this is really important because minerals are step number one. We have to get them.
Yeah.
Calcium, magnesium, phosphate, again, the things that are in hydroxyapatite. That's what the teeth need, those things. But those minerals will just free float unless you have two things. Vitamin D grabs them from the circulation. Vitamin K2, not K1, it's different vitamin. I wish they hadn't named it the same thing. Vitamin K2 puts it into the cell. Dr. Weston Price actually called it activator X. It wasn't even named in his time. Wow. So he called it activator X. He found that this activator X, whatever this thing was the differentiator. It was only found in certain things like butter that was made from cows that had eaten grass. Why? Because it's coming from the grass. So this vitamin D3, vitamin K2 are essential along with minerals that are specific to teeth. Calcium, magnesium, phosphate are the big three. I like to get it from a food source too, like silica is actually one that is found in horsetail. I like bamboo. You can get it from bamboo. So there's some food sources that have these. Interesting, there's a book called Whole, and I love it because in that book, the Dr. Colin Campbell talks about how you can take an apple and pull out all of the ingredients, and they'll never be as effective as when they're all together in the apple. Right. So I like getting it from food sources, like horsetail, like bamboo, where these minerals are together, and there's other synergistic things that help them become more bioavailable for the body. So that's what I focus on, those vitamins and those minerals in a way that the body can actually absorb them.
Yeah, because we don't know enough to understand the matrix of how nature put that together and the bioavailability. So that's why, will we ever understand? I'm not so sure, but certainly we know enough now that the microbiome of the soil and the health of the soil and the health of the plant, and just eat as close to nature as you can with the cycles of nature. And if you can grow something, and I'll go back to the sprout thing. The sprout thing is really powerful and easy accessible.
It's so easy.
Right? Because of that ability to unlock the nutrients in that sprouting process, you can have a full salad in 5 to 7 days of just sprouting, lentils and alfalfa and broccoli and alfalfa, and you can do that.
And your windowsill.
Yeah.
If you have a window, you can do it.
Do you know Doug Evans?
I don't know Doug Evans.
So Doug Evans, he wrote the sprouting book and created a company because he's so into it called the Sprouting Company. So he has little kits that can easily use, and you don't have to put it in your sink,
Love it.
And then you can sprout like crazy, and it unlocks naturally all of this stuff that, it make for 25 cents. Basically, you can have a full, mason jar full of fresh greens if you're that person in the apartment. And,
exactly right.
And you can't do it. So it's like all of those things add up.
Yep.
All little steps.
Exactly.
Add
and
up.
That's really what I talk about in my book is, first of all, how do you find out what your cells need? Because all medicine, it doesn't matter what we're talking about, it's all just a Band-Aid.
Yeah.
Because like when you cut your finger, what heals the cut?
Yeah.
Not anything you put on it, not anything you take, it's your cells that actually have to do the work. So the real question we should ask is not what medicine we should use, not what supplement, like even all those questions that we ask are really the wrong question to start with. It's what do my cells need to do what they need right now? Right. Actually, I've created an assessment in the book. It takes all of the traditional methodologies, Ayurveda, Chinese traditional medicine, German herbalism, Japanese Kenpo, all of these things together, and you plug your symptoms in, and it tells you where do you start. Because in today's information world, we live in overwhelm. Yeah. There's so much out there. And like you said, who do you believe? They're a dime a dozen. Yeah. So it tells you where to start, what cell needs help first, and then literally what is one thing you can do tomorrow. And it might be go buy your sprouting kit, go start it in your sink, because you are tomorrow now giving your cells more of what they need to be well. Yeah. And that's all it is. It's just one single thing, but very focused on staying well and getting well, giving your cells what they actually need.
That's incredible. I love that you've created that kind of quiz in a sense, because again, we're dealing with an individual and the biochemical individuality, and and that's the thing that kind of catches all of us, and we fall victim to the next craze too. And in fact, some of the basic, powerful, foundational things that we all need, and we're missing out on those. And if you spend $200 on a special supplement, but if you're not getting the basic electrolytes and minerals,
or if your gut's not absorbing it, it goes all the way through to the other side.
Yeah.
I joke that I have a supplement graveyard in my house.
Yeah.
I think we all have a supplement graveyard,
Sure.
where you learn about something, it sounds so great, and you take it for like 2.5 months, and then you go, did this do anything? I don't know. I don't even really remember why I bought it. Okay, it goes in the graveyard. What a sad thing. Yeah. And so it's really all about saying, no, there's no one-size-fits-all solution. Every single one of us is unique, and our cells will tell us what they need. It's called a symptom. Instead of turning off the symptom, which is what modern medicine has taught us to do. If you have a headache, take an ibuprofen. That's turning off the symptom. That's what your cells are screaming, no, I need something. So that's what I've tried to do, is help interpret those signals and say, this is what the symptom means.
Amazing.
This is what your cell needs. Now here's where you get it. And guess where it comes from? From the earth. All the things that the earth has provided, and this is where the answers lie. But you've got to basically pave your way through all the mountains of information on both sides and say, okay, there's no one-size-fits-all solution. Not everybody should eat this way or this way or this way or this way, or exercise this way or this way, because everybody needs a certain thing at a certain time.
Yeah.
And our needs change. Your needs are going to be different in 2 months from now than they are today.
For sure.
How do we find out what we need today? And that's really what I've done, is taken all this traditional medicine information and filtered it down into how can we plug our symptoms in and find out what our body needs today.
I love that. Is that the end of the book?
Yes, chapter 11.
Nice. So you got to get the book in order
and then
to
the end of the book tells you what to do about it based on
Right
the
on.
season that it tells you you are currently in. So
The thing that I wanted to make sure I ask you, because I don't use it, but I still, I was working out with a buddy at his house, and I went into his bathroom.
checking out his bathroom.
Well, I just I see stuff. I wrote a whole book on fatal conveniences and all the stuff to stay away from. And I see stuff all the time, and I see Listerine. And I'm going, oh my God. And my dad would use Listerine all the time, and that smell and it's
that burn.
Oh my God. And alcohol. So let's talk about that, because that's, from what I can gather, that's a really bad idea of annihilating the speciality of the microbiome in the mouth. So let's talk a little bit about that Listerine issue, as well as how to promote the good bacteria in the mouth, the good enzymes, the amylase and stuff like that. What are some health protocols that you think you can do? But first answer the Listerine issue.
Yes, exactly. So Listerine, the biggest problem with it is it is high alcohol content. Yeah. So we know what alcohol does. This is why when you're going to get, your blood drawn, they clean your skin with alcohol, because it's an antimicrobial. Yeah. So we know it kills bugs. And people talk a lot about the gut microbiome, but what we don't often realize is that there's actually multiple, I like to think of them as rooms. Like there's one room up here in your mouth that has certain bugs. There's one room in your stomach that has certain bugs. There's one room in the small intestine, room in the large intestine. There's actually different bugs in all these places. Yeah.
Beneficial ones.
Beneficial, and they have to be in those right places. There's a thing called SIBO, which is where the right bugs move to the wrong neighborhood. Right. They're in the wrong room. So if we kill off bugs here with high alcohol content, what it does is bugs in a different room start to move up to this room. So now all of a sudden, or bugs coming in from our food or from wherever start to move in, because the good bugs aren't there to defend us anymore. So we see a lot of biome changes. When the biome changes here, it changes in the gut. It changes in the intestine. It changes all down below as well. So we can't kill off everything. These are our friends. There's enemies there too, that we have to balance everybody. So what are things you can do instead? So I actually have a mouthwash that uses colloidal silver. And at a certain ppm, parts per million, it kills bad guys, encourages growth of good guys. I actually have a new one coming out with a prebiotic as well, where a prebiotic food, so you can eat prebiotic foods. What are some good prebiotic foods? These are things that you need to add to actually encourage good microbial growth. One thing that comes from Ayurveda long ago in India is oil pulling. So people ask me all the time about oil pulling, and I love oil pulling. Oil pulling goes to, again, science. I'm a scientist. I love this stuff. So every single bug is surrounded by fats. This is just the way they're made. So when you put fat in your mouth and you swish it around, what it does is it pulls bugs from in between the teeth. So it pulls them out and helps to balance them.
Amazing. So
we all done?
yeah, 2 minutes. Okay. Yeah, we'll wrap up. Yeah, so oil pulling's, that's good. I mean, that's been around for a long time,
Yep.
but then you go, is that really a thing?
It really works.
Yeah.
It really works.
What do you think the best, I mean, obviously coconut oil, or I've even heard people use castor oil. Do different oils have different?
They have some medicinal effect on the gum health itself, but it's honestly more important that you're going to use it. So castor oil doesn't taste great. Sesame oil is another one that's used, doesn't really taste that great.
Yeah.
Coconut oil has very little taste.
Yeah.
That's the one I encourage people to use. So I like people to use it for every day for about 5 days, just to get things balanced. And then you don't need to do it every day.
Right.
You do it about every third or fourth day after that, just to keep up on things.
Right.
So super simple thing. Everybody, anywhere you live, can do at home.
Yeah. So like a tablespoon.
Swish it for about 10 minutes.
10 minutes, okay.
Yep. And then spit it into Kleenex, not into your sink unless you like clogged drains. So spit it into Kleenex and throw it away. You would be surprised how many people do that.
Oh my God. Yeah, and then you have to get a roto-rooter.
Exactly right. Yeah. So don't do that.
What is one more thing that you think people need to understand about their maybe overall health or their mouth health?
The thing I think that we've really lost in today's world is this understanding that we can stay well. And that's really what we need to focus on when it comes to the way we feed ourselves, the way we move our bodies, the way we relax, is that we can stay well. Our cells have the ability to do it. We were divinely designed to do exactly that. And our job is to give those cells what they need. And when we start fighting against that, the information they give us, the symptoms they share with us, all of those things, we've turned off the most powerful medicine we have, the most powerful information we have. So we don't have to wait to get sick to work on our wellness. Whether it's oral or overall, it doesn't matter. There are ways to stay well, and we are designed to do exactly that.
Is there a food that you like? I mean, I'm going reductionist on you, but is there a food or a group of foods that you love for your teeth, for your oral health, or overall in general?
I actually love grass-fed butter for teeth health.
Oh, wow.
It's really important for teeth health.
Wow.
So
I won't eat that.
You won't eat that. Exactly right. The other thing you can do then is lots of greens.
Yeah.
Lots and lots of greens, whether it be everything that's chlorophyll based. So lettuce, kale, spinach, arugula, bok choy. Line them up and eat them all you can get.
Get the greens.
Exactly.
Well, thank you so much. This is so great, and living well from a different perspective, and I'm glad you're healthy.
I'm
glad you're on this and educating people, and it's a missing link, and I'm grateful for the work you've done.
Thank you so much for having me here.
Yeah, thanks. Perfect.